Just Basketball Show, end of September here. I'm Chris Manning, that's Wes Goldberg. Wes, cold open question of the day for you. Tony Allen is getting his jersey retired. Made me think and do some reading on and just process some thoughts about the grit and grind era Grizzlies. Is there a team for you that never quite won a title, never was quite in that inner circle of championship, so maybe didn't have a true superstar? Because I don't think we think of Zebo or Gasol or Mike Conley or any of those guys of that era as true blue chip superstars that you like more or remembered. You have like a team of that ilk that you remember fondly, the way I think I'm kind of feeling about the Grit and Grind Grizzlies.
It's a great question, right? Because I think we tend to, especially these days, we view everything through the prism of championship or bust, right? Like if you're not a
Yeah.
championship team, what are you doing, right? Like I think if the Grit and Grind Grizzlies existed now, people would be saying like, "Hey, you should trade everybody in their prime and tank because you're just not good enough," right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't even that long ago. I mean, long ago enough where now Tony Allen is going to be the third member of the Grit and Grind Grizzlies to have his jersey
But
retired.
like,
Zach Randolph and Mark Gasol being the other ones.
yeah, but and Mike Conley, you assume sometime in the future, and you would also say he's obviously the only one still active. Also, like if and I think if we were even now, if the or 2 years later, the they would have been like crushed for not trading Mark Gasol earlier.
Right, right. But there's like a nobleness in just competing. And I think that's why everybody loved those Grit and Grind Grizzlies, is because you always knew they were going to go far in the playoffs and they'd be interesting. They were also interesting to watch because they're so different than everybody else. They had such a strong identity. But you also didn't have any expectations with them. So it was all just vibes. It was all just good stuff. It's like every time they won a playoff game, you're like, oh, this is cool. This is kind of a cool proof of concept for a team that's just different than everybody else. The other one that reminds me of that a little bit is the 7 seconds or less Suns, but they
Yeah.
were actually like people thought they could win. They had Steve Nash and Mari Stoudemire. Like they probably should have won a championship. So they had the superstar. Like Nash won back-to-back MVPs. So they don't really count in the way that you frame the question. So my answer is a little bit closer to home, but it's those like late '90s Miami Heat teams with Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway that just kept running into the Knicks and the Bulls in the playoffs. And I don't know that anybody really ever realistically expected them to kind of break through because as great as Alonzo was, back-to-back Defensive Player of the Years, Tim Hardaway, obviously a Hall of Famer, none of those guys were at the level of a Patrick Ewing or a Michael Jordan or some of the other, superstars in the Eastern Conference. Nobody was on MVP ballots. So that to me is the team I think of. But it was still heartbreaking for me as a kid. But I do wonder,
Mm-hmm.
like, if I were to kind of look at that team through my more mature lens now, if I would have been as disappointed.
Yeah, a couple coming to mind. All kind of slightly removed, but not so far back that they can't be kind of nostalgic, put viewed through nostalgic lenses. Like a lot of these guys have retired. Looking back at it, I really like the Budenholzer era Hawks. In retrospect, blasphemous anyone ever picked them to beat the Cavs with
That
LeBron
was
in the
crazy.
playoffs. That was dumb that we ever. I didn't do that, but
I
like
didn't
very
either.
smart people that I really liked reading at the time did that, and that was crazy. But those teams were actually pretty good and like had an identity in a way that I give them a lot of credit for building
Yep.
something. The other one that came to mind is another team that just couldn't get past LeBron, and that's the Roy Hibbert, Paul George, Lance Stevenson Pacers.
Oh, I hated that team.
I'm not saying I like loved watching them, but it's like Roy Hibbert was literally like the last of his kind. And the moment that era ended, it was like that kind of center is dead. Like Rudy Gobert is like a not that exact kind of center, right? Like he's more mobile. Like he still has some similar limitations, but Hibbert was like literally the old school big guy who invented verticality in the modern NBA. The moment that era and that team was done, absolutely, like he's gone, and there's just like
Well, it was
something about
you
that
can
era
almost
that's
reverse
gone.
it, right? Like the moment that his skill set was no longer, and again, skill set in air quotes here, was no longer viable, that team was done, right?
Yeah.
Because they were kind of built around that. It's
And like
interesting that you
playing
put the
him,
Pacers in there
him and
because
him and
I
David
couldn't
West, by the way, not a front court pairing that like you could say
can't
that
do it
like
today.
people would
David West would
freak
be a
out.
small ball five in today, and I don't know that he wouldn't. He's one of those players that wouldn't be better in the modern NBA. He
No,
actually was right in the right time, maybe at the tail end of his right time. Yeah, I couldn't stand those Pacers teams because like their greatest skill was one of them was just being tall, and the other one was being annoying. And I'm like, that's different to me than the Grit and Grind Grizzlies, who actually had an identity and
yeah,
some
that's
skill.
true.
But I'm also talking out of my own bias, so there it is. Because the team they kept running into was the Miami Heat and Lance Stevenson blowing in LeBron James's ear, just pissed off everybody in the South Florida area. So no, but those are some good shouts, and like there's there's so many great teams, right? And that's the thing. Like I would love to. Is there a team now that we might be talking about in this way 5, 6, 10 years from now? Because I don't know that we appreciate teams that way
We
anymore.
don't. I am trying to make myself do that more because I do agree. I do think I don't really like the discourse that it's like title or bust or like I that's such a like dumb way to look at success. I
Can I,
think
if it is, and I agree with you, and I brought up the same point, so I don't want to like kind of go against my own point here, but I will say like it's easier
you're
to say
Pat
that when
Riley
you're
throwing the rings on the table right now is what you're about to do. You're about to just
no, I think it's easy to say that when you're talking about the team that you're not a fan of.
sure,
Right? Because I even
absolutely.
think for those Memphis teams from the outside, we could be like, oh, it was so cool. There was no expectations. But I bet you there was a lot of Grizzlies fans that were disappointed that run never ended in a championship. Like it's easy to say it. So it's like, oh, I wish like we could define success in another way. But every fan base wants their team to win a championship. I don't think that there's a fan base rooting for, hey, I just want to win like 48 games a year, 50 games a year, and just get to the second round of the playoffs. And then I'm good, right? Like I'm good after that. Like I don't know that there's a fan base like sort of admitting that. But that said, yes, I do think that we need to almost like I think everybody now in retrospect could see that Memphis team and say, you know what, that was a really good run. And I'm looking up and down like, is that the Lakers now?
They're like in the prestige zone, so I'm gonna say no. I there's a couple teams
If we
that
just
came
look
up.
back on these Lakers and just like, wow, that was LeBron's like last act. That was really cool. Like,
Well, I'll
yeah,
be
maybe
doing
we
that.
had a little bit of expectations. We may have went too hard, but it was at least fun to watch it. I don't know.
I'm gonna do it. Like the day LeBron retires is the day like I am gonna really like have to grapple with like who's like my number one ride or die in the league at that point. Um,
That's
I
what
think
Anthony
that
Edwards is here for. Yeah.
yeah. Well, so funny you say that. I think the Wolves could be absolutely be one of those answers.
Mm.
Like if Ant just has like a KG like run where they just don't quite get over the hump, wouldn't like I think that they're in the running for this. I don't know what the Knicks just feel like like they have New York, so I don't really know if I can like say that the Knicks count for this. And I'm too close to the Sun, and I think everyone's pretty apathetic towards Cleveland, where like they're just
No,
going to win
Cleveland
a lot
doesn't
of
count
games.
because they don't have a. No, I think the answer might be the Indiana Pacers because they have. It's similar, right? Where they have a very distinct identity, and you
Yeah,
look forward to them playing on national TV or coming up in League Pass or however it is that you consume the NBA. That's the team I look at. Is like, all right, that's like a different flavor, right? Where like the
yeah.
rest of the NBA is just is something else, but like Indiana Pacers, that's like just treating yourself to like a an ice cream sundae at the end of dinner like once a year, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the Indiana Pacers. Maybe that's
Well,
the answer, but we've spent
once a
too long
year
on this
is
already.
I'm going to say too little for ice cream. I know it's
When was the
unhealthy.
last? Not an ice cream sundae, full
Oh,
with banana, hot fudge. Like when was the last time you actually had the ice cream in the boat with the accoutrements, the whole thing?
the accoutrements is a great accoutrements is a great word.
Gracias.
Yeah, okay, it's been a while. Yeah, might have been last year.
I think it was like high school for me, but
I was at like a wedding or something that had like an ice cream sundae bar as like the part of the dessert thing. So that might have been that, but I had some libations, so I don't who knows what was going on at a
libations, anything that happens after libations, I'm not responsible for.
yeah, calories they don't count at airports and after you've been drinking.
Correct.
That's how this works. That's the doctors say that they don't say that. All right, on today's show, another odds focus show. We've got awards: so MVP, Rookie of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, Most Improved Player, and Coach of the Year. We're gonna bounce through all of those today on the Just Basketball Show.
Spectacular move by Michael Jordan. LeBron James with no regard for human life.
What is up, everyone? Chris Manning and Wes Goldberg here. We are the Just Basketball Show, twice a week covering all things hoops. You can follow, rate, review on your podcast app platform of choice. Hit subscribe on the Just Basketball Fans YouTube channel. And check us out on TikTok, Instagram, and X. I want to alert you to recording this a little bit ahead of time. So if something happens between now and when we record this, Wes will have some coverage up on our YouTube. We'll do some social content. We'll figure something out. I'm going to be traveling, just made it hard to record, so we're recording a little bit ahead of time for transparency's sake. It's also why we're not like getting into Liberty Aces because that finals rematch is happening in the second round of the WNBA playoffs, and
We'll have some
be
WNBA playoff stuff on the other side of your travel, though.
very excited. The playoffs have been not good yet, but they're going to get good, and I'm very excited for where we're headed. And my Liberty title feature bet that I placed at BetMGM I feel pretty good about that right now. Want to tell you, though, about support for today's episode from BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code JustBasketball and you get up to a $1,500 first bet offer in your first wager with BetMGM. Here is how it works. Step 1, download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android and sign up using code JustBasketball. Step 2, deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. Step 3, you receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code JustBasketball, all one word, when you sign up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 or older to wager. Terms and conditions apply. Wes, let's get into the odds. These are all, again, from our friends, our partners at BetMGM. MVP, let's start there. Here are the top 5. And if there's another name that you want to throw out there, I when I was making these lists, I kind of just was picking the names I felt we had something to say about, or at least were the top 5 from there from a betting standpoint. Luka's at plus 350, Jokic at plus 425, SGA at plus 475, Embiid at plus 650, and Giannis at plus 850. My mind goes to Luka and it goes to SGA. I'm not saying I'm going to discount Jokic, but if we're looking at this year and I'm crafting the narrative, Wes, of how we get to an MVP at the end of the year, Luka and SGA stand out to me as the two guys that I think of as the most likely to get the MVP this year.
That's where my mind went to. Those are the two names that I have written down here. I thought Luka should have won MVP last year, and I thought it was a little ridiculous that he wasn't actually seriously considered. It seemed like the whole conversation was Jokic and SGA last year, and I did a whole video for us on the YouTube page breaking down, like, I think Luka had the best season. I'm not saying he's the best player in the NBA, but I don't think there's any doubt he had the best season. And so the guy's at the peak of his powers, and if he just, I think, turns in another year like that, coming off of the Mavericks finals run, we do tend to just be a little like a year late on these things sometimes. And so maybe the fact that most people are recognizing, all right, Luka's good enough like to drag a team to the finals, maybe we should reward him in some kind of way. If the Mavericks win 50 plus games, as we talked about when we did our Western Conference over-unders, I think you and I both have them at over 49.5. Then Luka's going to be very much in the conversation. So that's a good bet here. Luka's just going to be on MVP ballots for the next half decade.
Yes.
He might not be first, but he's going to be on every ballot for basically, barring anything unexpected, for the next half decade. SGA might be the better value play here, though, slightly. Like, he's at plus 475 on MGM. Luka's at plus 350. SGA might be the better one because if the Thunder just do what we think they're going to do and win 60-plus games, there's going to be a good chance that we're just like, you know what, this is the best team in the league. Just give the best player on the best team the MVP award. And we could have ran into that with like that was the argument for the Celtics last year, and maybe Jason Tatum didn't get enough shine as an MVP candidate. I think the way we think about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is different than the way we think about Jason Tatum. We look at SGA and like, that's a prime scorer. Like, there's no, like, you know, Celtics fans like, you don't understand the nuances of Jason Tatum's game. Okay, maybe we don't. You don't need to understand shit when it comes to SGA. You watch him play, and that guy's a bucket, and that's very easily translatable to MVP ballots. It's very easy to understand. So, between the two of them, I'd probably, if I had to put money on one of them and not both, I'd probably lean SGA. So I'll go SGA.
To hit on Luka for a second, and I have an SGA point I'll make. You're right that we're a year late on these things. We can overthink it. He's going to have, I think, probably the biggest numbers out of any of these main guys. He's just going to put up insane numbers. Like, SGA will have a little bit more support and also just plays, I think, a little bit less. You know, he doesn't maybe take quite as many threes and is a little more just in a more structured environment where there's guys to feed, where Luka, like, doesn't always have that. Luka's also of the guys where I'm thinking about this in a very basic way, where there's guys in the league that I would be shocked and appalled and whatever other words you want to use if they don't get an MVP by the time they're cruising. Luka is like number one on that list of guys who haven't won it yet, who I think are going to get one at some point. He's number one on that list. You know, you could say Shai is going to get there as well. I mean, I understand making an argument for Tatum for as good as he is, for as good as his teams have been. I get why, like, he might be an argument there, but, like, it's just year 2 for Wembanyama. Like this feels, and his teams isn't particularly good yet. We're not like there with him fully yet. We are there with Luka, where this is the MVP window, and if he doesn't get one this year, or the year after, or something like that, I think something's just gone wrong. I lean there, but SGA, to your point, SGA is going to have the simplest case by being the best guy on the best team. As we talked about on the over-unders pod, that team could win 60-something games, and it wouldn't really be a shock to us. That team's going to be awesome. He's going to be awesome. He's hyper-efficient, good two-way player as well. You can spin the narrative of this is also a good defensive player in a way Luka maybe isn't all the time. Doesn't have the same kind of, like, the weirdest thing SGA does are his Instagram captions. It's like nothing as frustrating as I think Luka can be at times to Mavs fans and Mavs staffs who try to keep him calm down. But those are the two guys. Giannis at plus 850 is the other one that I just thought about for a second, just because it could be like a y'all must have forgot. Bucks figure it out under Doc and Dame gets better this year, and Giannis just rolls and is a defensive monster as well, and he gets another one. Embiid, I think, is going to just have if he played 52 games, I'd be sure that's actually probably better for their championship equity to some degree, just keeping him healthy. Don't need to run him into the ground as much. He's done everything but win a title. He doesn't need to put the energy into this. Giannis doesn't need to put the energy into this per se, but I do think, Wes, if his team is chasing a lot of wins and he's great and driven in all of these things and it clicks in his favor, there's a window there for Giannis, I think.
I agree. And not to go too meta on the conversation here, but I do think that, and we'll probably touch on this a little bit as we go through these. I get the sense that there's a appetite for something new in the NBA, and it's why I didn't even really consider Jokic, even though I still consider him the best player in the league. I didn't really consider him for this award, although you can easily make a case that he should be. He's another one of these guys like Luka that's just going to be on ballots. He's just going to be on ballots. He just won MVP again, and I don't think that I even consider that his best season. So he's going to be one of those guys, but based on the fact that we didn't get as much change this offseason as I think people expected, I do wonder if we try to force something new into the narrative and the conversation. And I wonder if we're, as a collective, as an NBA media collective, just sort of, champing at the bit to pass the baton to, based on the way we even talked about Anthony Edwards in the Western Conference Finals, it just feels like we're so ready to move forward with this new generation that I feel like that's going to be reflected in the NBA awards. Now, again, totally meta of a conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously theoretical, only anecdotal evidence backing up my point here. That said, I kind of did that throughout sort of that might be the theme as we kind of pick some of these awards.
I mean, Wes, I do think we are in something of a transition phase right now. Durant is older, LeBron is older, Curry is older, and even the guys a tier younger than them, Embiid, Giannis, Jokic, they're 30. These are guys in their primes. This is when they maybe start taking little more breaks here and there, take some time to rest their bodies, have a weird injury last year or something. This is not the necessary ascend kind of thing. Luka and SGA are more on that, feel more kind of in that ascend path right now. Wembanyama more in that ascend path. Tatum to some degree, I think, is a little more solidified. But it's if you told me he had the monster redeem year of his career and his team wins 65 games, it's I could talk myself into him getting some votes at least.
I'm a little surprised that Tatum's all the way down there at plus 2,500. I don't know if it's because the Celtics had as good of a year as you could ask for, and he was awesome last regular season, and just still wasn't seriously in the conversation. Maybe we've just friend zoned Jason Tatum in regards to the MVP conversation.
I think he has been friend zoned with the MVP conversation. I don't think there's a Celtic that's really when you look at the odds.
I will say this though, if I were gonna sort of make the case for Tatum's MVP candidacy here, it's that, as we know, the Boston PR machine works wonders, and if they can get Marcus Smart a Defensive Player of the Year award, they could figure out a way to push Jason Tatum even more. And if Tatum comes out and just has a marginally better year than he had last year, which again was awesome, I think there will be some regret on behalf of NBA media as to not considering him more. And if the Celtics just come out and again have the best record in the league, he's going to be under heavy consideration, and there will be a few guilt votes for him. Some feel bad votes. Also, Anthony Edwards at plus 1,400 is pretty far down there. I think Minnesota is going to win a ton of games. If they somehow come out as the number one seed in the West, I think that's totally realistic, right? I think all of us would bet on the Thunder, but it's not like a done deal, right? Like I think it's totally realistic that Minnesota could have the best record in the West. We are so ready, like I said, to give Anthony Edwards all the credit and to sort of anoint him as the next guy. It wouldn't shock me if he was in this conversation either. I think we picked the right two guys to start, but yeah, this sort of speaks to how wide open this race is right now.
Yeah, I think this could be an interesting MVP year, which sometimes it isn't, and sometimes it feels like the meeting with voting and like the discussion points are decided like November 1st, and I kind of hate that. So I'm hoping we don't get there this year. All right, let's go to Rookie of the Year. Weird rookie class.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anyone's like super thrilled about this. This is like from a betting perspective, whereas like I think I made you a half a unit each on like Luka and SGA, like a little safe hedge there. I don't know if I'm touching any of these for Rookie of the Year, if I'm being honest. But Zach Edey at plus 475 is the favorite. Reed Shepherd plus 700. Alexander Sarr at plus 950. Bezelis plus 1,000. Stephon Castle plus 1,000. And Zachary Reese-Shea plus 1,300. Zach Edey has like a Michael Carter-Williams-esque case for how he could win this award, Wes. This is the way I'm looking at this.
Yeah, and he's also going to be productive. I mean, at the very least, the guy's going to grab 9 or 10 rebounds a game, and that by itself in an underwhelming rookie class might just be enough, right? It's very similar to MCW where I think he just had a bunch of assists and everybody was like, yep, good enough for us. That's fine. And he averaged like 10 points a game or whatever it was. If Edey's just 10 and 10, that literally might be good enough for Rookie of the Year. And so I think what we should do is retroactively just give this award to Chet Holmgren or Brandon Miller from last year, because both of them are going to be better rookies than anybody this year. It's not fair that one of these guys are going to have that Rookie of the Year trophy in their house somewhere, and Brandon Miller and Chet Holmgren are just like sort of sitting there like, we were pretty awesome as rookies, and nobody cared because of Victor Wembanyama. That said, because that's not realistic, this is total. If I had to do something, I'm looking for value. Zach Edey at plus 475 is actually pretty decent value for a favorite in Rookie of the Year. So if you wanted to sprinkle on that, wouldn't mind it. I'm looking at Stephon Castle at plus 1,000. If the Spurs make a push here, Victor Wembanyama is obviously and rightly so going to get most of the credit. We could, if they somehow make the play-in tournament, we could be looking for reasons to reward that team. And Stephon Castle, by the way, might be a big reason why they get that far. Like you and I discussed the Spurs in our over-unders pod, and my biggest concern with them is their lack of depth behind, I think, the starting lineup, and especially, with guys who can kind of create their own shot and stuff like that. So if the Spurs get good enough to make the play-in mix, I would assume that Stephon Castle was pretty good as a rookie.
Yeah.
And I think there is a chance that he could be productive. I think there's a chance that he could play even in that starting lineup with Wembanyama a little bit, even next to Chris Paul. I think they can get into some of those rotations the way that he plays. Is he an off guard? Is he an on-ball guard, a point guard? I think he's a little bit in between, so you can kind of move him around a little bit. And here's a little stat for you. In case people want to like get crazy with this pick and go like Rob Dillingham or Dalton Connect because he plays for the Lakers or whatever, like Bub Carrington because he might get a bunch of shots in Washington. It has been a long time since any rookie picked outside the top 4 has won Rookie of the Year. The last 7 rookies of the year have been picked in the top 4 of their draft. The last one who wasn't was Malcolm Brogdon in 2017.
Which is a controversial-ish kind of award.
Yep. And a rather weak draft class also. And so you could say, look, in another weak draft class, maybe it's a little bit more open. I would argue that probably it is. All that said, I feel like I've already taken too much time on Rookie of the Year. I'll go Stephon Castle. That's my pick. 4th pick in the draft this year. So he qualifies for my made-up statistic there. Not made up, but random statistic. And I think he'll get enough of an opportunity on San Antonio, and I think we're going to like the Spurs this year, so he should probably get enough shine to qualify for this award.
Yeah, I want to point out again, 2013 draft, that 2013-14 season is the comparable draft, I think, that a lot of people have made to this one. Michael Carter-Williams won the Rookie of the Year that year with 104 first-place votes. Averaged 16 and 6. Edey going like 12 and 9 or 10 and 10. And his team wins 50 games. I'm like, yeah, I think that's where I would go. So that's the way I would go. Like, I think he's fit for a reason. And I just don't like that. Like, Castle has a good case, but it's just like, I don't think there's great opportunity there for Reese-Shea. Really, like, that Hawks team is just a little weird. Bizelis, like the Bulls. That there's a Bulls guy that I'm kind of curious about. For a later word we'll get to. This is not the place I'm going. Sar was so bad in summer league that I wouldn't touch. Plus 950 for him, and Shepard a plus 700 at the number 2 spot. I think tells us a really compelling story about what this rookie class is, Wes. Because I think there's a world where like he has an interesting rookie year, but I don't know how much opportunity he's going to have considering that roster. And it's like if he's the number 2 guy, then I think this is really like a wide open kind of crazy thing.
Yeah. That's the thing with Reed Shepard is we just don't know the opportunity that he's going to get. The Rockets just have so many guys who need the ball, who need to play. Alex Sarr, I think we're overreacting a little bit to his summer league, but also I wasn't that high on him in the draft anyway, so I wouldn't.
And he plays for the Wizards. Like he plays for the Wizards. It's just that's not going to be a good situation.
And then you just like it says a lot that Zachary Risache is so far down this list. He was the number 1 overall pick. Usually those guys are the overwhelming favorite to win Rookie of the Year, but I don't think anybody expects him or the Hawks to really do anything. And then we can just sort of go down the line here and make a case against everybody. It's kind of just hard to find a really strong case for anybody. Edey is like I think you're right. I think Edey is the safest pick. It's the right pick. You're actually getting pretty decent value out of it. If we want to go that as a show, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think Edey's the way to go. But I think like a little sprinkle on Castle is not a bad way to go. Defensive Player of the Year, Wes. I'm gonna tell you now. I'm picking your guy at Bam Adebayo at plus 1200. I am just gonna pick Bam every year until he wins one, and I don't. I just think he's that good. Wemby's at the favorite at minus 250. Bam's at plus 1,200. Gobert at plus 1,300. Chet at plus 1,400. Mobley at plus 1,800. Triple J at plus 2,000. 80 at plus 2,500. OG Anunoby at plus 4,000. And Giannis at plus 4,000. I have two things about these odds that I personally bristle against just a little bit in terms of how I think about this race. I think Chet and Mobley being 400 apart is like a little weird. I think that's like underrating Evan Mobley a little bit. I think Mobley's insanely good, had a weird year last year. I think he was a finalist like 2 years ago in his second year. Like, he should not be that far behind, I think, where Chet is at.
Okay.
Second thing, I understand that Wembanyama is unbelievable. I'm not going to deny that he's not, like, going to be a superstar, but this was the 21st ranked defense a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of leap do they need to take where he is just, like, clearly the, like, individual?
Top 10.
Okay, so if they're if they're top 10, is he winning this award? Is that where you go? Okay.
Yes. And I did this exercise for another podcast that I do, trying to predict.
Plug it, Wes.
Yeah, the Real GM, Real GM radio podcast.
Real GM too. Yeah.
So, me and my co-host, not my co-host, my guest on that episode, Mo Dakil, tried to guess the top 10 defenses in defensive rating for next season. And I came out with San Antonio at 6, and he came out like at the same kind of range. If that's the case, Victor Wembanyama is winning this thing, and it's going to be a runaway because there's no conceivable argument that you can make that the Spurs should otherwise be a top 10 defense. And I actually thought like I kind of didn't want to have the Spurs in my top 10 because of exactly what you said. I'm like, are they really going to go from bottom 10 to top 10? And then I just crunched the numbers. I just looked at every number. I don't need to go into the advanced metrics, but it feels like as long as Victor Wembanyama plays most of the games and plays 30 minutes per game, they're going to walk into a top 10 defense next year. They were top 10 in defense post All-Star break last year. We saw it. We have seen this. There's like the proof is there already. As long as they just do it for a full season, plus you get Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, you get veterans on that team who could just kind of teach the young players how to take defense seriously. And I think a Spurs team that's actually going to be trying to go for something, which didn't really feel like the case last year. Like this Spurs team, I think, is going to want a gun for the play-in tournament. So they're going to be playing for something here. I really wanted to pick Bam because again, Miami bias here. I want Bam to win one of these freaking awards at some point. I have come to the conclusion that he's probably never going to, unfortunately, because he's so deserving of it. But I don't see, like, if San Antonio and Miami finish the same in defensive rating at the end of the year, the award's going to San Antonio.
Sure.
It's going to the San Antonio player. It's going to Victor Wembanyama. So the other way I thought about this, too, I mean, you bring up Chet and Evan Mobley and why the odds are so different. I would argue, like, Cleveland, they've always been in the top mix in defensive rating this year. I think the Thunder are going to run away as the best defensive team in the league in terms of defensive rating. And we might feel a pull to reward their best defensive player, who's clearly Chet Holmgren, with the Defensive Player of the Year award. So I actually like Chet Holmgren at plus 1,400 as pretty good value. I think he could definitely crash this conversation, and I don't think we talk about him enough because he's sort of been little brothered by Victor Wembanyama for various reasons. But that's who I went. I went Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren are the guys. Like if the Thunder have the number 1 defense in the league, do we give it to Chet if San Antonio has a top 10 defense in the league?
I think it would go to Wembanyama.
I agree.
Just because I think you would reward the ecosystem of OKC because it's like
Yep.
they have Lou Dort and J-Dub and Shea, like
Caruso, Hartenstein.
like they're
Yeah, I mean,
loaded
that's
with really good defenders. That's like the other reason why like I bristle at the Chet Mobley thing is like the Cavs have a lot of good defenders. The Thunder are overloaded with good defenders where Mobley is covering up more.
They were 4th in
weaknesses.
defensive rating last year. So in terms of like selling the narrative, it's like, look, San Antonio terrible on defense, now amazing on defense. Why? This guy. The story writes itself. It's easy.
The long shot one that I like is OG. For this reason, if the Knicks need to solve their 5 issues, I think a lot of it is going to be OG Anunoby defending some 5s, and if he plays 60-something games and is like an all-over menace defender, and the Knicks are really good, I think there's a really good case for OG.
I don't hate it. I hesitate to put any money on OG and staying healthy because that's
he might play
here.
50 games. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
The long shot name I like is Jalen Suggs. He's way down this list at plus 6,600.
Yeah, he's
the Orlando
incredible.
Magic are going to have a top 3 or 4 defense in the league, and Jonathan Isaac is a big part of their defense. A lot of their guys is a big part of their defense. Jamal Mosley does a great job coaching them. Jalen Suggs is maybe the biggest reason why they're an elite defensive team and is, more importantly, sort of the avatar for them on defense, the way that Marcus Smart was when he won it ridiculously, but won it a few years ago for the Celtics. So Jalen Suggs at plus 6,600, sprinkle a little cash on that one. That could pay off.
If guards want it more, I would believe you, but it's like we live in
Totally
a world where
fair.
like Drew Holiday, like, you know, doesn't get this, like, and Drew Holiday is like the best like perimeter guard defender, like the last like 10
Further
years.
cementing why it was so ridiculous that Marcus Smart won that award.
Just add John Corrales, okay? Just
I do. We argue about this all the time. It's fine.
gotcha. John.
He actually thinks that Marcus Smart had a good case,
of
which
course
is
he
nuts.
did, because he's John Corrales. All right, sixth man of the year.
Okay.
My least favorite award. Just gonna say that because it's
All right.
just.
I
Can I-
agree. You pitched me before we started recording, like, let's just skip it. And I was like, why? It's an award. And then I started looking at it, and I was like, you're right. This is really
Okay.
boring.
Here-
so just
here-
give me your name, and then we could just
Well,
and like a elevator pitch, and we can move on.
Well, let me just. This is how I think we should. I think 6 million. It gets defined historically as like who scores the most points off the bench.
Mhm.
I just think that removes like all the value of like what a modern bench guy is. Like we don't have like very few modern just come in and like score 15 for me, Jamal Crawford types. Like Naz Reid last year was a great example of a guy who scored a lot, obviously, but also was a good defender, also was creating playmaking. Like he provides like starter, like you're trying to find someone who provides you something that's like an off-speed pitch to your starting lineup fastball that adds to like your winning equity. And when I look at this list, I think Malik Monk is a relatively good pick for the Kings. Reed repeating wouldn't shock me. I think he's gonna be vital for them. I really think like a Josh Hart or DiVincenzo one is the way I think this absolutely breaks.
I'm going with a Knick.
Yeah.
We're going to want to reward the Knicks for their depth because it feels like it's their strength, particularly on the perimeter. I think that there's a lot of... And so I did the same thing you did. I was between Hart and DiVincenzo, and I think in games that OG Anunoby isn't available or somebody else isn't available, DiVincenzo will get the nod to get those starting minutes. So I just think Josh Hart has a better chance of coming off the bench for more games, whereas like... I don't know. OG Anunoby needs another elbow surgery in December or something like that. Like DiVincenzo could just like not even be eligible for this award at the end of the season because he started too many games. So I go Josh Hart on this. I also think Josh Hart is sort of just feels like a guy that people want to reward.
Yeah.
Like it's like, and I know I keep coming back to like, oh, people want to reward this kind of thing, but
this is a human business. This is a human business.
and that's part of what happens here, right? And so, yeah, I don't see like Jalen Brunson necessarily being on an MVP ballot, MVP favorite here, even though he could certainly be on ballots. They don't really have a Defensive Player of the Year caliber player outside of maybe a long shot OG Anunoby. So where do they get rewarded if they have an awesome season? It might be with 6-man, and that feels appropriate. And so I go Josh Hart here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go hard as well. I think if DiVincenzo if like the health thing doesn't matter as much, and DiVincenzo maybe has some of the scoring moments he did last year, I think that's where he comes in. But I think it's one of the two Knicks.
Doesn't hurt to put money on both of them. If you're just thinking
Yeah.
Nick is going to win, you might as well just do both.
Yeah, split a unit.
Yeah.
You know, at these long odds, it's plus 1,000, plus 1,400. That's
Totally
the kind
worth
of thing
it.
where I would split a unit and just go from there. All right, most improved player. Victor Wembanyama is the favorite at plus 700. Kuminga.
And he's going to win it.
Okay.
It's done. We're done. He's going to win it.
Okay.
Go ahead. Give me your second. Give me your second best.
I'll give you my second and third. The two.
Because you agree, right? Wemby's getting it.
Yeah, Wemby's going to
All right.
win
So who's
this.
second?
I love the idea of Jalen Johnson at plus 1,400, just like having like a breakout year. I just really like him. He's like the only other. He's like one of the few things I like about the Atlanta Hawks. I think a Giddey rehabilitation year is very much on the table with the Bulls. I've come
He's
around
not winning
to
an award for a lot of different reasons.
a lot of different reasons, but I'm just saying like he's in there. And then the one that I was thinking about that I threw on here at plus 2,000, the worst odds on the list, the longest odds on the list. If Jalen Green just like figured it out this year amid like everything going on in Houston and like really solidified himself as like maybe a future fringe all-star kind of guard and like really just manifest all of his immense potential, that's a guy I could see getting rewarded for particularly if the Rockets have a good year.
That's a great call out. Yeah, if he's awesome and the Rockets are in the playoffs, he's definitely a potential guy here. I also like Jalen Williams at plus 2,200. If he makes that leap to fringe all-star, the way that Tyrese Maxey made it last year, he's going to be in this mix. And I don't think that there's going to be enough Thunder players that we can reward if they win 60-plus games. So I like him as a long shot too, but Victor Wembanyama is winning this thing.
If Jared Allen had been traded, I would have tried to make a case for Evan Mobley. Alas, that did not happen. So I don't really think the opportunity is there for Evan Mobley.
Cam Thomas at plus 4,000 if he just comes out and scores like 20 a game because he's taking 30 shots a game. No, I think we're too smart.
If the Brooklyn Nets get any awards this year, we've made a huge mistake.
Yep, they won't.
Huge mistake. All right, let's go to Coach of the Year.
All right,
last
here we go.
one.
Yep.
Ime Udoka is the favorite. I'm putting that in air quotes for those watching on YouTube at plus 800. Taylor Jenkins plus 850, Tibbs plus 850, Jamal Mosley plus 1,000, Nick Nurse plus 1,200, Chris Finch plus 1,400, Joe Mazzulla plus 1,600, Mark Daganall plus 1,600, and Eric Spoelstra plus 1,600. Wes, where does your head go here?
I'm giving it to Spo. He's got to win it eventually. It's kind of your Bam Adebayo argument. Can we get a Miami Heat player some sort of award after this stretch here? The only Heat player. They've been to, not to do a whole Heat thing, because I have a whole other podcast.
I mean, Wes, I thought about like clearing out and letting you just give me 5 minutes on why Bam is the best defensive player of the world, and I was like, Wes doesn't need me to do this to him. But I kind of I love Bam. I think Bam is in my top 5 like favorite dudes in the league that I would like draft on my team right now. I just want to say that for the record. I am in love.
How could he not be? Everybody wants a player like Bam. Nobody would complain about. Unless you're a Nuggets fan, I think everybody would be like, yeah, I want Bam. Or I guess a Spurs fan now. But you could play Wemby and Bam together. Yeah, so who cares? So, listen. Eric Spoelstra needs to win this award. It's long overdue. He is, by consensus, 2 years running now, and it probably should have been longer, the number one coach in the NBA. He is. Ask any close NBA observer who's the best coach in the league. They'll tell you Eric Spoelstra. Who's the second best coach in the league?
Except for me or Brendan.
Wide open.
Well, it's Ty Lue's number 2 to me. I think Ty Lue's a pretty clear number 2.
He's in that conversation, right? Like I think, but a lot of people. I mean, you could strongly believe that, and I think a lot of people would have opinions, but it just feels like overwhelmingly consensus is number 1 is Spo, and then it's a conversation after that. The fact that he doesn't have a Coach of the Year award is pretty nuts. It's bananas. It really is. I think this is the year he gets it. And the reason I say that is because we're going to have so much parity in the league. And I don't think there's going to be an appetite. Even if the Thunder have the most wins in the league, there's not going to be an appetite to give it to Mark Daigneault twice in a row.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's going to happen. You very rarely see a Coach of the Year 2 times in a row. You just don't see it. If the Celtics come back and win the most games, Joe Mazzulla will be in this conversation. I don't know that there's an appetite to give it to Joe Mazzulla, even this early in his career, despite the fact that he has a title. We look at that team, it's loaded, all these things. Like all the reasons why Celtics players didn't really win awards last year is going to be the same reasons this year, I think. I think that we're going to sort of just, and this doesn't even sound right, but I wouldn't shock me if we all just sort of collectively shrugged our shoulders and said, let's just give it to Spo. As long as the Heat finish with a top 5 record in the East. That would be my only thing here. Like, they can't be a play-in team again. If the Heat finish outside of like a top 5 or 6 seed in the East, 6 might be a little too low.
Yeah, 5. I think 5 in like a top 10 defense is the way.
4 or 5, and they're going to be top 10 in defense, or the Miami Heat. They just will.
Okay.
So, but they can't be bottom 5 in offense either.
No.
But yeah, they whatever. Yes, if they're top 4 or 5 in the East, I think Spo gets it.
I think it's a great shout. He's going to deserve one. There's no question about it. My cheeky answer here is to say whatever East team actually pushes the Celtics the most in the regular season. So is that Tibbs? Is that the Knicks? Or is it Nick Nurse with Philly? Like, is it, I don't know what his odds are, but like, is it Kenny Atkinson in Cleveland? Is it Spo? Is it Jamal Mosley? Whichever.
Rick Carlisle is all the way down there at plus 3,000. The Pacers are going to be good.
Yeah, like I think it's very possible if there's a team that like the Celtics start off slow for whatever reason, and there's a run there, I think that's where some value is. Taylor Jenkins is then the other one I look at, because I think if the Grizzlies have like a monster regular season, there's just like a really easy case. And that guy is a really good coach. And like it wouldn't be like a weird kind of thing there. I think he would be deserving if that team with moving parts figures it out.
The problem I'm having with the Coach of the Year race this year, and it's why I'm kind of just betting on sort of a Lifetime Achievement Award for Spo, is it's kind of hard to come up with a narrative, right? Like, Ime Udoka is the favorite. I don't really know why. Are we just assuming the Rockets are making the playoffs? Because if the Rockets are a play-in team, he's not winning this.
No.
Taylor Jenkins, you could argue, okay, Memphis won 22 games last year or whatever they won, and now they're in the playoffs. But like, everybody sort of expects that to happen. We understand why they stunk. Like, it's not the normal narrative of new coach on a formerly bad team who takes them into the playoffs. Like, that's not happening here. Taylor Jenkins has been deep in the playoffs before. We understand that Ja Morant barely played last year. Like, it doesn't. Like, the narrative doesn't exactly hold up there. Tom Thibodeau, same sort of thing. Like, first of all, he just won Coach of the Year a few years ago. The Knicks are already good. We understand that for the Knicks, it's mostly about the playoffs anyway. And as a regular season award, I just don't see the narrative there. Jamal Mosley, are we really going to give it to the Magic have to be what, the top 3 seed?
The Magic would have to have like an all-time great defense, because that offense is not going to be good enough for them to really be
right. Exactly. They're not winning 60 games. Like, it's not happening. So I don't really see it from Mosley. And they were in the playoffs last year, right? Like, Mosley made sense as a Coach of the Year candidate last year, and I had him on my ballot. But in terms of winning the thing, I don't know. Nick Nurse, like, they just added Paul George. They have Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid. Like, he's got the best roster he's ever had. Like, the narrative's not there. And again, with the Sixers, it's more of a postseason thing than a regular season thing. Chris Finch, like, the Timberwolves were awesome last year. Like, they have to win 70 games for him to be Coach of the Year. Like, there's no narrative there. So I just keep going down the list, and I just don't see the narrative. And then that's why, again, I just go back to Spo, and I'm like, you know what? If I had to bet, I'll bet on Spo, because if they're out of the play-in tournament they've been in the play-in tournament 2 years in a row. They have not really changed their roster very much. They're dealing with the Jimmy Butler thing looming, like, is what his future is going to be. They have been lapped by so many teams, at least on paper, in the Eastern Conference. They were a first round and out last year, again, in the play-in tournament. If they're a top 5 seed, if they feel like a really solid playoff team that has a chance, I think he gets it.
Considering we're going to be wrong about all these, 'cause that's just how this works.
Correct.
Which one of these do you feel most confident in? Do you feel like we nailed on the analysis? Because I think we kind of nailed the MVP one better. We started off like great, and then the rest of it's like, I don't fucking know. Like, I think we're going to get some weird stuff.
All the Wemby things, right?
Yeah.
Like, Defensive Player of the Year and Most Improved, I feel like, especially Most Improved. That's the lock.
Can I just be? I don't really know why I'm being cautious about Wembanyama with like award stuff. I can't tell you why I'm doing that.
I think most people will tell you you're crazy. I won't. The guy's played one NBA season. Like, and the expectations are so dramatically high. And by the way, they were when he was a rookie, and he surpassed them. But the expectations are like that just pushed the goalposts further. So if he comes anything lower than what expectations are for any reason, then yeah, he could just be eliminated, full stop, from all this stuff because he didn't meet our expectations, even if he would still be sort of technically deserving or outperforming some of his peers here. So I don't blame you at all for being a little skeptical.
It's not even just skeptical of him. It's more of like, I look at like the guys that have been in his position before, which is like, let's just say like LeBron and Jordan, like guys that come in with, and really like LeBron is kind of the best example. didn't like win stuff right away. Like didn't get like awarded stuff right away. You know, and the league's deeper now.
Well, he got Rookie of the Year. LeBron.
Yeah, but he got Rookie of the Year, but didn't get DPOY year 2. Like
never got DPOY, but
He
that
has
wasn't
never got
really his
DPOY.
thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. There wasn't, and there's
And
not
we didn't
really,
think
like,
did we have Most Improved back then?
I don't know. And there's not like an Offensive Player of the Year award. There wasn't the clutch. Like, and he wouldn't have got the clutching anyway, considering the narratives at the time. But like, it just feels like I don't know. It's hard to get rewarded in year 2. I think if he does it, it's just like it'll be earned. I think, but it's like,
Yep.
It's just historically that has not happened. I think is where I'm hedging slightly, and I am just a little wondering like how good are the Spurs actually going to be? I think that's kind of the. Like, he could be awesome again, like he was last year, and their defense is improved to like 16th, 15th, 14th, and I don't know if that would be enough.
Can I propose something, an edit to the way we do these awards?
Yeah.
Most Improved is the dumbest award that we have. It's
Yeah.
fucking stupid. The way we think about it, Tyrese Maxey won it last year. Like John Morant has won it. It just ends up going to these guys who have, like, they're awesome and they did improve by wide margins, but they're high picks. Like we expected them to kind of make those leaps at some point, and we just rewarded them when they did it.
You reward the superstar loop we already knew was coming. This is why I liked the Kuminga like argument last year, because he like dramatically did like improvement. This is like real way, and after having kind of a middling start, like really turned it around. That was like something unique within the structure of this.
I look at players on the teams that you and I cover, like the Cavaliers and the Heat. Max Strus was kind of like played different last year for Cleveland.
Yeah.
Like he was doing more stuff on the ball, more of a playmaker passer. Duncan Robinson, ditto. Like these guys actually put the work in to change and improve their game, and that to me is the spirit of what the award was supposed to be and should be. Versus guys who are just so supremely talented that the leap was just gonna come eventually. And it's not to say that they didn't work on it and they didn't work for it and all these things. 100%. Like Tyrese Maxey worked hard on his game, but he's just like a different kind of player, right? And I understand he was picked 20th and stuff, but like him, when Wemby wins it this year, John Morant a few years ago, like it just feels like we're rewarding leaps that were bound to happen.
Yes. Like
Versus
we have
a
the
player
evidence,
who got in the lab, put the work in, and said, I need to improve X, Y, and Z to stay in the league, to be a good role player, to have more value to my team. And that to me is what this award was supposed to be, and it's sort of changed over the years. And that's fine, but let's change the name of it then. Let's change the name of it. And my reward now, the way I want to think about this is the best under 25 player. And we can create like a fun name for it.
Yeah.
But that's essentially, if we're going to keep approaching this award in this way, we got to change it. We got to change the way we name it, because it's not really Most Improved. The spirit of the award is gone. So I think let's just call it the top 25 player, the top under 25 player.
Yeah, it's like let's use it. Let's formalize what it uses now, which is validating a future superstar.
Yeah. So what's that thing in business they do, like 40 under 40?
Yeah, like the Forbes.
Doesn't like Business Insider, Forbes, or something do that?
Yeah.
Like 40 under 40.
A lot of city
40,
magazines do like the these young professionals in their markets. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just do that.
Okay, I'm down. I'm all down. They should do like teams for that.
So they have, right, like the all rookie team. So what if we just change that to
keep all?
like
I'm saying keep all rookie, but then let's do like 25 and under teams for guys that are like years 2 to 7 or whatever.
Then we get in that tricky bit of like, well, Luka's awesome right away. So which team is he going to be on? Is he on? Can you be on both?
Yeah, why not?
I guess so, because you could be like on the all defensive team and be on the all NBA
This
team.
this
So, yeah,
doesn't.
it's fine.
I mean, this isn't in the CBA, so we're just like inventing something that doesn't have an abstract issue on like his compensation. So
I would actually, when you when you have to put these teams together at the end of the year, I don't know that I need another one.
okay, how about we do it? You and I will do this year, and we'll decide if it was a bad idea or not.
Fair enough.
We'll do it at the end of the year, and we'll be like, yeah, we didn't have a guard for, or we didn't have a.
So what is it? Two teams?
Yeah, we
So
didn't have
are 10 under 25?
Yeah, we didn't have a second team power forward for 25 and under.
We will. I'll get Jaime in there.
The Jaime Evan Mobley debate that ruins the podcast.
Yeah, we'll save that for probably the last 10 minutes of the show.
Yeah, and then it'll be like, all right, guys, it was nice talking to you, but we're done here. But that's gonna be it for our NBA awards. We're gonna again be back next week. Eastern Conference over/unders, WNBA playoffs, and more coming at you. We'll talk to you then. Use our promo code BetMGM to go place these bets and all your NBA bets this upcoming season, and MLB playoffs as well, NFL season, MMA, all of that available on BetMGM. Promo code Just Basketball for that first bet offer. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the hoops.